Hello, everybody, and welcome to Finding the Guardian of Your Soul. I'm Lisa Shield, the founder and CEO of Emotionally Naked Dating, a 12-week course for finding the guardian of your soul. And this is the beautiful Rebecca Garnett, who is my head coach. And I think she gets more beautiful every time I see her. Rebecca, it is wonderful to have you here today. It's so much fun to be able to do this with you and not have to sit here and be a talking head and listen to myself talk. I do that all day long. So, welcome. It's great to have you.
Lisa, I love doing these with you. And I love the topics we talk about because it really brings thought to me. Like I spent time thinking about this and how maybe I didn't recognize these things. And I think it's great that we're bringing awareness to the topics that I would have never thought about this.
Yeah, well, and the great thing is this was actually brought to us, the topic was brought up by Cassie, who is another one of our coaches and is my operations manager in the business. And Cassie coaches a lot of the women in END. And this is something that she brought up, which, you know, I think that these are incredibly important considerations for women. I think that we go through dating and it's hard for both sexes. It's really tough for both men and women to understand one another. We all feel misunderstood by the opposite sex. And, so for me, and I don't know, Rebecca, maybe you can in on this as well. One of the things that was eye opening and very, not just eye opening, but very helpful was in looking at the struggles men go through in dating. And it helped me develop compassion for them because I grew up with a mother who bashed men. She said horrible things about my father and created a very negative impression in my mind about men. And it wasn't until I started to look at this from both sides and see that, hey, it's not just women that have a tough time, men have a hard time too. And that really helped me level the playing field. What about you?
Um, I thought men just had it easy. They were the ones in control. They were the ones getting to choose whether they asked us out or not. And I was really resentful of the fact that they had it so easy. And I think in some ways, I even made myself a victim. They've got it so much easier than I do. And I hadn't realized what a struggle it was for them as much as it is for us, and maybe even more so in some places. And so I think, much like you said, it really changed my opinions about what it was like to be a man in dating. And it also changed the way I showed up on dates. It also really, um, it was a place where I was able to soften. And in that softening and really being open to understanding what it was like for them, it created a lot of connection. And so I think for me, it really changed my dating course.
Yeah, and I'd love to also hear from some of the listeners about their experiences and, some of the prejudices and preconceptions they carry into dating. Because when we see men as having it easy or easier and we make ourselves into victims, it's very hard to open our hearts and be vulnerable, to get emotionally naked and connect with men. And then we go on dates and we're longing for this emotional connection with a man, but our very ideas about men and our walls and our, negative preconceptions cause us to, not trust them, not to trust the process. We think they just want sex, or we think that they're, just looking for the next best thing, or they all want the prettiest, youngest, woman, and they don't really care about us or see us as people. And so it causes us, even though we're longing for connection, it really creates this us against them approach that prevents us from connecting.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, it switched the us against them to, hey, we're all in this together and we're all really just looking for the same thing. And we may have different ways of going about it, but in the end, we both want, male or female, we both want that connection. We both want to be heard. We both want to be understood.
I think the connection is a little off. I don't know if it's you or me, but it's a little interesting, but we'll go with it. So let's talk about double standards, right? So you wrote down a list of double standards that you and your fiance, Sam, talked about over dinner last night. And I think this is great. I love that it came right from, a horse named Sam's mouth. And I think that this is terrific. So Rebecca, why don't you, talk about the first one?
Yeah. So, when you brought up the topic, it really made me pause and think, how much do I really know about this? And what were my preconceived notions? And then I wanted to hear Sam's perspective as a man, because it's easy to look at us, right? And what our world is, but I wanted to really expand and see what was his experience in dating. And so, one of the things we talked about is breaking the breakups, right? The breakups, when women break up with a man and they don't get blamed for dumping them. It's good for you. You deserve better. You're elevating yourself. And what men get is you're afraid of commitment. You're just a player. You don't have the emotional wherewithal to have a relationship. And so, maybe it is that in some men, but in some men, they just may be making the decision that's best for them. And what they get in return was a little shocking.
Yeah. Wow. What was it like to hear that?
It was a little heartbreaking because, I think when we break up with someone or when we're dumped, we want to do something to make ourselves feel better. Like that's the knee-jerk reaction. And so, good for you, you're leveling up, rather than looking at, okay, what was really the truth? What do I need to own in this relationship? What didn't work? What were my patterns?
Interesting. Yeah. And what about the next one? This is a great one too. These are really excellent. I love this.
Thanks. The next one was anger.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about how in dating, it's okay for a woman to be upset, but it's not okay for a man to be upset. And the belief is that if a woman gets angry at a man, it's his fault. It must be something he did. Or if a man gets angry at a woman, he needs to learn how to control himself.
Yeah.
And I think, when we look at it and we say we want these emotionally available men, but we don't want all of their emotions, or we only want some of their emotions, I think we have to recognize that everybody gets upset. And being upset is part of the human process. It's a natural emotion. You know, one of the other things Sam said is, you know, women get angry at a man, and the expectation is that a man needs to learn how to not make her angry.
Hmm. Or
And
not
that's,
angry back at her.
yeah,
Right.
and that's a huge burden for a man to carry. And I think it starts to really trigger on their shame, right? If the woman's angry, then they go into a belief that, can I really make her happy? And then what's wrong with me as a man?
Hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff around anger. For women, women are also told that they can't get angry at men. And I understand it's, when there's also another layer to this that I think is really important to mention, that when women do get angry at men, their testosterone levels rise and they naturally get angry. That's what men are wired to do. They're wired to fight, and when they sense danger, their testosterone levels shoot up and they start to get angry and violent. And it is hard for them to, like with another guy, they just go out and fight it out. But with a woman, it's almost emasculating for men because they have to then control their anger and not get angry in return. And so a lot of times men will suppress that anger, and women think they're being wimps or they're not being responsive. But what actually can happen is they're so busy just trying to calm themselves down and self-regulate that they can't interact, that they cannot engage with the woman because they're trying to suppress their anger. And so that's another big issue with women and men. When women get angry, they often judge men because they become non-responsive, or they may go punch a wall, right? But whatever a man does, he's between a rock and a hard place because he's not supposed to get angry back. So what else? These are great.
um, I think most women, not every woman, but most women want men who are gentlemen. And I was shocked to hear Sam's experience around this. Um, he said, you know, he's very gentlemanly. He's very chivalrous. He opens doors. He pulls out chairs, car doors, carries bags, all of that stuff. And that's very important in who he is. And he says he was on dates and he would open doors for a date. And he had a woman that said, I don't need you to do that. We both know I'm perfectly capable of opening doors. And that was the beginning of their date. And, you know, he said it really put him in a quandary because, you know, he doesn't, now he feels like uber conscious of, do I do this? Do I do that? Should I say this? Should I say that? And it really created a mismatch for him in showing up as who
Wow.
he was.
Interesting. Wow. Yeah. Yep. And then there's the issue of when the check comes.
Yeah. Sam and I have had extensive conversation about this because it's something that comes up, I think, for a lot of women. A lot of women really want to know, should I pay the bill? Um, and we talked about it, and what we came up with is, you know, when a woman pays the bill, when a man offers to pay the bill and the woman insists on paying the bill after he's offered, he said it was almost like a way of keeping them at arm's distance. Um, and, you know, he said it for him, it put it in the friend zone because he would split a bill with a buddy.
right.
And when we take men out of that arena of where they can show up for us, it kind of leaves them in no man's land.
Yeah.
It's a mixed message.
There's another double standard where women are making a lot of money. We're working, we're very successful, and we still expect men to take us to beautiful dinners and pay for everything. And, that also can be confusing to some men who are not making tons of money, and where it is true that the dating is expensive today. Even going to the movies, which could used to be a relatively inexpensive date, can now cost $100 just to go to a movie and get tickets and popcorn and all. It's expensive to date, and a lot of women are just. It's not even that a man, sure, any gentleman is going to treat, but it's the expectation that they have to go to a certain restaurant, that they have to be wined and dined. And, what do women do in return? There was a great video. Oops. Unknown caller. I apologize. There was a great video where a man was sitting at a table, a good looking guy, and he had, three young, attractive women there. And he said, "Look, I get it. You want us to, ask you out, plan the date, call you in advance, pick you up, take you to the location, pay for everything. God forbid we kiss you or touch you or whatever, and what do you do? Like, what do you do? What do you do in return?" Right? And the women all kind of looked at each other and they were like, "Well, I got dressed up," you know, but they couldn't really offer anything. And the guy listed like 10 things that he was expected to do, and she got dressed, she put on clothes and showed up for the date. Yeah. So,
Well, speaking of clothes,
yes.
I think appearance. Appearances are a big deal for men just as they are for women. And, one of the things I hear from women a lot is they want someone who's attractive. They want someone who they're attracted to, who has, that sex appeal. And one of the things we as women may do in that place of wanting this, which isn't wrong to want. I want to be clear. It's not wrong to want to be attracted to someone, but how we go about it is the key. And so, women may end up being critical of men and what they wear. And I heard a story of a woman who had a man show up for a first date and she didn't like what she was wearing. She proceeded to tell him that she wanted him to go home and change his clothes before they went out. And he did. And what that made me think about is, when a woman does that, it's because they have fashion sense or they have standards or they're wanting that. But if a man was to say that to a woman about her appearance, he would be a superficial jerk.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's almost like I can't even imagine for men. I mean, sometimes it would be nice if they would put a little more thought into the way, into their appearance. We had a woman on the mastermind call, which is one of our advanced groups in our program. And she said that her first date was great. The guy looked really wonderful. But on the second date, he just completely looked disheveled. I mean, it was incredible how, it looked like he had just barely pulled his clothes together, and you know, and she was upset by that. And I don't know what was going on in his life. I don't know why, he wasn't dressed, but she was really upset, but if a woman showed up like that, she'd be pissed if a guy was checking her out or didn't think she looked great. So, yeah, it's really tough. It's really, really, really tough. Um, and, women do put a lot of attention on their appearance and on their clothes and getting ready for a date and looking pretty. And we do that because there's so much pressure in society for women to look good and to dress up, and I think it's important for women to also understand that that is one of the things that we do, that we offer. And a lot of men just don't have a lot of fashion sense. They don't. And many men with the right touch are open to a woman saying, "Hey, I love a man in a suit." Or I love it when you untuck, a guy who untucks his shirt and, doesn't wear socks. I like that European look with a, great, great pair of loafers and an untucked shirt. And, the right guy's just going to show up that way the next time. So all it takes is a little suggestion. What about friends?
So Sam and I were talking about this, and this may be something that shows up a little bit more in exclusive dating relationships or even relationships. But, I think it's the idea of, how we categorize men and women getting together.
Mhm.
And when women gather, we see women getting together as it's bonding, it's intimate, it's processing, it's sacred. And when men get together, we have an assumption or a stereotype that they're getting together and they're drinking beer or they're watching sports or they're womanizing or it's all just out with the boys' behavior. And so some of that belief can be very off putting to men when they start thinking about, do I want to date? If I date, am I going to have to give up my guy friends? Or if they have friends that are dating, then there's this, Sam used to say, I knew when I saw friends dating, it's like, that's someone I'm not going to see for another 6 months.
Really? Because the woman gets
Yeah.
her claws in him, and that's it.
Yeah, because there's the belief that, if he's going out with the boys, this is what they're going to do. And then, we as women are like, oh no, I don't want you to go out. I don't want you to do that. Or we try to over occupy their schedules so that's not available for them. And, for Sam, he says it was really, really he says he was happy to see his friends dating, but he also knew, bye bye.
Interesting. And what about emotional maturity?
I think this is a big one, especially in our groups, our E&D group and our SSW mastermind groups. We all, almost every woman wants a man that has emotional maturity. And I think in society, when women look at being emotionally available and doing emotional work, it's encouraged and it's revered. Much of our society discourages or even encourages emotional maturity for men. They're not introduced to communication in the same way we are. And many, many times, if a man is sensitive or emotional, he gets, told that he's a wimp or he's not a man because he can't stand up and put on this front where there's only certain emotions that are shown.
Yeah, somebody I really respect and admire is an author. His name is Warren Farrell, and Warren Farrell wrote a book called "Why Men Are the Way They Are." And it was a game changer for me. It really was. We in our course just have the women listen to a 2.5 hour interview with Warren, but I read the whole book. It was a tough book to read because it's very, very, very dense. But boy, did that open my eyes to some of these double standards for women and men. It's just full of them. And one of them is around personal growth. The book was written in the 90s during, 80s, 90s, late 80s, early 90s during the women's lib movement. So, when it was really in full swing, maybe it was even the 70s. And so it feels a little outdated, but it really isn't. And one of the things that Farrell talked about was he wrote about how, especially back then, women would read all of these self help articles. And I think this is still true today. They would read all of these articles about personal improvement and whatever. And then they would go to the guys and they would use the information in these articles to say, well, you need to be like this, and how come you're not more like that? But they weren't doing these things themselves. The very things that they were talking about, they had read about them, they understood the behaviors, but they weren't really implementing them. They were just, being down-putting and be lecturing the men. And what he said was that men respect other men who do things, not talk about what they're going to do, but actually do those things. And here we're all, here's all these women talking about what to do, but not really doing it themselves. And so it was really, a lot of the men felt that it was very hypocritical. And like the women were using all of this pseudo self-help, but they weren't really putting it into practice themselves. And I think a lot of women do this. They read book after book and they all think they're experts on this stuff. But they have a lot of knowledge, but they haven't really put a lot of that into practice, and they use it against men. So, yeah, yeah. Well, what about physical touch?
This, I think as a woman, this was a little bit harder for me to digest. But then I'm not a man. And so, it's the ability to be able to look at and say, what is someone else's experience outside of my world? And could there be something that's true for both people, but different experiences? And I think it is more acceptable for women to touch men. And if we reach out and put our hand on their shoulder or put our hand on their thigh, it has a different connotation than if a man was to put his hand on our thigh. And there was an example that was given, and it said there was a woman who was in a bar and she was touching this guy and someone she had just met, and she's touching his butt, she's touching his crotch, and the reaction was that people were laughing and they found this amusing, and wasn't this cute, and look at her. And Sam says to me, well, what if it was reversed? What if it was the man doing that to the woman, and how different that experience would be? And he says, when you're out on a date and as a man, you have to think about, is it okay to hold her hand? Is it okay to give her a kiss? And there's the expectation that the man's going to take the lead on this. And he says, sometimes it puts a lot of pressure on knowing where to take the lead and when is too much and when it's not enough. Because there'll be some women that will say, oh, he didn't even kiss me. And they insult his masculinity because he didn't kiss, and he just may not have felt comfortable
Yeah.
moving forward. And it's really a quandary that we really, I think, both men and women have to come together and understand this so that we're clear about what we want and what's okay.
Well, and I think today with the Me Too movement, men are so afraid. Many, many, many men are so afraid of being accused of something, even when they're making. I read an article by a man who said, a really, really honest, revealing article where he talked about how um, technically he nearly sexually violated a woman and didn't even know it. And he didn't, he stopped himself right before it happened, but she had invited him to go to a wedding, and they were staying in the same room, sleeping in the same bed. And it was his assumption that he was her date and that, they're in the same room, they're in the bed, whatever. And so he started to sexually, make sexual advances and all. And um, he realized, he stopped himself just before it went too far and realized that she wasn't really being responsive. And some women have a heart, they can't set, they really have they become paralyzed, or sometimes they don't know how to navigate those kinds of situations, and they can't, literally don't know how to say no. Sometimes that it becomes paralytic. And she wasn't pushing him off, but she also was completely non-responsive. And he was a writer, and he said, thank God I figured out what was happening and I stopped, because I realized she just wasn't receptive, and I had completely misread, what was going on. And a lot of people may say, well, she shouldn't have invited him to stay with her, but I guess they were friends and he just assumed that, this was what was happening. So, it's a really, really, really precarious time now. And I think a lot of men are afraid, and you're right. They're damned if they do, and they're damned if they don't. If they do make advances, they can be predatory. And if they don't, they get accused of being gay. So it's, there's a very fine line there. Warren Farrell also talked about, and again, probably more of a relationship thing than a dating thing, but he talked about how, women doing work around the house and being mothers and taking care of the kids, they consider that like their work. But when a man comes home, he's expected, uh, he is expected to take care, do certain things, mow the lawn, do the dishes, do certain things around the house, repairs and all. And it's just expected that he's supposed to do those things. And there's not as much value and appreciation put on, the fact that he was working all day, making money, making a living, and then coming home, and he's expected to do those kinds of things and not really appreciated for doing them. And then another one that I really liked that Warren Farrell brought up was, that a woman's fantasy and a woman's her, what she really, and her need are the same. A woman's fantasy is to have the love of one man and to be with one man. A man's fantasy is to have a harem of women. And his real need is to have the love of one woman. A woman doesn't have to give up her fantasy to have her dream, right? To have her need, her ultimate need. But a man has to give up his fantasy in order to get his need. And women don't appreciate the fact that they do give that up. They give up their sexual freedom. They give up, a lot to be able to be in a partnership and have the love of one woman. And a lot of women just take that for granted, that if he's going to be with me, he's going to be monogamous, he's going to do this, he's lucky to get me and to be with me, and these are the conditions. And our Judeo-Christian society, supports all of that. And it really supports the monogamous, union. But many men are willing to give that up for the right woman, but women don't appreciate what men are giving up to be with them. So, another double standard, that we don't appreciate what men go through, who they are, and what they have to sacrifice sometimes. Many times men are expected, I'm going to give you children. You have to be the provider, the major breadwinner in this relationship. But they don't even realize that that man may have had real fantasies and dreams of being an actor or an artist or a musician. And he gave all of that up to be with her. And she just expects that that's the way it's supposed to be. So, because that's what she wants. Those are her dreams, but he may have sacrificed. I actually had a client who got divorced, and in his late 40s, he came to California to become an actor because that had always been his dream. And he could finally, go out and see if he could really make it as an actor. And he was living his dream. It was really sweet. Yeah.
I think the last one is a really important one. Is if a woman sets a boundary, it's empowering.
Mhm.
If a man sets a boundary, it's seen as controlling. And when I mentioned that one to Sam, he says there is so much there for men, so much there where, and I think a lot of it flows into what they're giving up, right? What they're giving up to be with us and what they still want to maintain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think, when I asked Sam why he asked you to marry him, he said, because I've never met a woman who lets me bring all of myself into a relationship, who really loves me the way I am and just wants me to be even more of who I am. And he was so excited by that, that he just, he said, how could I not marry her? And that was really one of the sweetest things, and he didn't necessarily want to get remarried, but when I don't think he'd ever met a woman like you, Rebecca. So it was an easy choice, I think, it seemed like it was a very easy choice for him. Well, this has been a wonderful topic, and I love that Sam was brought in and got to weigh in on all of this. He really offered some incredibly valuable insights. So please thank him for me and everybody who's listening. And we have time, I think, for some questions or just some comments if anybody wants to weigh in. And we have a few more minutes here, and it doesn't have to be on this topic. It could be just a general dating question, but we would love to hear from some of you who are listening. We'll take a little bit of time if anybody's out there and wants to ask a question or two. You are more than welcome to, with me or Rebecca or whatever. It doesn't have to be about this subject. We'd love to hear from you. And we'll give you a minute. If we don't get anything, then we will take this time to go do other things. Yeah.
You know, Lisa, I was going to say one of the things that allowed me to create that space for Sam is looking at these things
Hmm.
and really just not, I think many times we feel like there's someone that has to be right and there's someone that has to be wrong. And, what's the right experience to have? And going into it, I was able to say, this is my experience. This is, what is his experience? And where do we want to meet in the middle? What is the experience we want to have together? And it was through the courses, through END, through Mastermind, through SSW, that I was able to learn how to integrate this information into something that's made a beautiful relationship, and to be able to sit down and talk with him about this and still learn about his experience and what makes him tick is priceless. And I think it's what women want to be able to have with men.
Yeah, it's so incredible. Look, men are fascinating creatures. I mean, once you get past all of the stories we tell and all of the, mythology that surrounds this, and you really just look at, we're all different. I mean, you and I are different. People are different. But when you start to value and appreciate male female differences and you're not threatened by them, but you really just get curious, about them. Like for me, I'm a huge Esther Perel fan. Like I just think she's awesome. And if anybody who knows me knows I'm a realist, right? I'm not an idealist. I think people cheat. I think we all find ourselves in situations we never thought we'd be in. We can sit there and say, I would never, dot, dot, dot. And then suddenly you turn around and it's like, whoa, wait a minute. How did that happen? Right. And so for me, it's not trying to be naive and pretend that those things, can't happen to me. It's just, who am I going to be in the face of it? What am I going to learn from it? So we do have a question here, and thank you for that. Is it okay if both partners have different interests overall, but it seems to flow well in the relationship? Could it be bad not to spend a huge amount of time together? Rebecca, what are your thoughts?
Um, I love having different interests in a relationship because I feel like it makes the relationship bigger. And it's a place for you to really know what makes that person tick and for you to be curious about it and them for you. And, Sam and I have very different interests. He's very musically inclined, and I have and talented, and I have zero musical ability or talent. But what it's done is it's opened my world. It's, I've learned about it. I'm able to appreciate it with him. I'm able to share it together. And I may not be on the same level as he is, but I still enjoy it. And I think, we enjoy spending the time together because we're together, not because of the interest. And in return, he's shown the same interest in things that I have interest or talent about. I mean, just even being able to sit down and spend our dinner together talking about this because he knows I'm passionate about it. He meets me there. And I think it becomes a beautiful dance when you're able to start meeting each other in the places and showing interest in who that person genuinely is.
Yeah. And I also think that more important, it is very important to have some things that you enjoy doing together. For me, all I want to do is spend time with Benjamin, and we love spending time together. And, we have very similar interests, and the way we enjoy spending our time is similar. So, for me, that's just a joy. It's a great joy. But even more important than just having similar interests, which you can introduce each other to those things, and share and turn each other on, especially a man. Rebecca doesn't have to be musically inclined, but she's very open and curious. And if Sam wants to teach her something or, share something with her, he wrote her the most beautiful, wonderful song when they were dating, about how nothing rhymes with Rebecca. So it was precious. So, you can be open to exploring things. Men actually love women who are open to doing the things they want to do and where they can teach them. Like if you want guys to really be into you, say to them, hey, I don't know how to golf, but I'm a great student and I bet you're a great teacher. I'd love for you to teach me how to golf sometimes. So you can always do that. It's a great way to really, guys are totally turned on by that because they love to teach us things and they love to seem like, they know things. And that's one of the ways that they impress us. But more important than all of this is having shared values. Your core values absolutely must be the same. So if you share similar values around religion, how to parent, being in nature, for some people, nature is a value. For some people, food and healthy living are values. So, if one of you is very healthy and slim and athletic, and the other one is going, to the store and buying bags of chips and junk food, that could be a big issue for many, many people. So many couples. So, core values really have to align. All right. Well, we don't have any more questions, and my stomach is rumbling. So I'm going to take this golden opportunity to thank everybody for joining us today. And Rebecca, thank you for being here. It made the hour fly by so quickly. And I love spending time with you. So I really appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to explore this.
Yeah, and we'll do it again. All right, everybody. I'm Lisa Shield, and this has been my head coach, Rebecca Garnett, and we want to thank you for joining us today. You can hop over to lisashield.com and click the button that's all over the website to watch my free 45-minute presentation. If you like what you hear, stay to the end because that's where you can book a call to talk to a member of my team about how we can help you find a guy like Sam or a man like Benjamin. We call them guardians of our souls. And you can also send us your suggestions for future podcasts. You do that by writing to me at podcast@lisashield.com. And finally, tell everyone you know about this broadcast, your brothers and fathers and sisters and mothers and aunts and uncles, your girlfriends, your guy friends. Please spread the word. It means the world to us. You can give us a thumbs up or a like. You can also let us know what you think about our podcast in the comments. And I do a second broadcast. It's called Getting Inside the Right Male Mind. It's part of Finding the Guardian of Your Soul. And that's where I probe the mind of my husband. And we really explore some amazing topics. We look forward to seeing you again. Have a beautiful rest of your day. Bye-bye. Bye, Rebecca. Bye.